Welcome to another edition of Ozarks Voices. My name is Tom Peters. I'm the Dean of Libraries at Missouri State University. Today's date is July 18th, 2016. It's a Monday, and our special guest today is June Hamra. Welcome, June.
Thank you.
June, we're going to find out a lot about June's life, but I know for a fact that she was a member of the Jubilaires, which was a group of young people who sang on the Ozark Jubilee, nationally broadcast live television show from downtown Springfield in the late 50s. So June, where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York.
Really?
Yes, I was.
How did you happen to come to the Ozarks?
Well, I grew up in Westchester County.
Uh-huh.
I went to Arkansas to visit my grandmother and grandfather after I graduated from Eastman School of Music.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew a family in Steele, Missouri, and we're going to a party the next day in Steele, Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "You're going to come with us." I said, "Missouri." I'm in Arkansas. I flew into Memphis, Tennessee. Of course, New Yorkers know nothing about geography.
Yeah.
And I went to this home, this family home, and Sam Hamra was a son of the couple that my grandparents knew, and he was doing his 2 years in the Army, ROTC, had been stationed in Germany, was home now at Fort Meade, Maryland, and had flown home and surprised them for the weekend event.
Really?
And he was at the door when I walked in.
Did he answer the door?
No, he was in a receiving line.
Uh-huh.
And immediately took me aside and asked me to show me the house. And could he drive me home that night?
Oh, boy.
And then said, "Would you be okay with me asking you out when we go back to the East Coast? I'm stationed at Fort Meade, Maryland." I said, "Well, that's just fine. You can call me." And that's how it all started.
So it was a totally chance meeting.
Absolutely.
In Steele, Missouri.
That's right.
And I'm not quite sure where Steele, Missouri is.
It's in the boot heel of Missouri.
In the boot heel?
That little boot heel.
Right, yeah. All right.
And he had gone to the University of Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
And when he proposed to me several months later, he said, "Would you mind if I went to law school?" And I said, "No, I think that's a wonderful idea." He enrolled at the University of Missouri Law School, and I went to audition, and they said, "Would you like to teach voice?" And I said, "I would love to teach voice, but I want to get my master's degree." They said, "You can do both." So they paid me for teaching on a fellowship while I was getting my master's degree. It was wonderful.
Great. Well, let's back up a little bit. When did you first start to, develop your voice, realize that you loved to sing, that you were a good singer? How did you sort of get started to sing?
That's another interesting story. I was quite young. My aunt, we had two aunts living with us, my father and my mother, and my two aunts and my brothers. And my one aunt would take me lots of interesting places, the opera, Radio City Music Hall.
Oh,
And one day she took me to Radio City Music Hall, and we toured, and I was about 8 years old, 8 or 9. And they said, "Now we want you all to stand in this one room here, and we're going to show you a new innovation. Is there anybody here that can sing?" And my aunt just pushed me forward. She said, "Oh, this little girl can sing." Well, I didn't know I could sing, and she didn't either, really. So I went in the next room with them, and lo and behold, they put me in front of this screen, which was a television monitor. I didn't know that at the time. And they said, "Little girl, what would you like to sing?" And I said, "Mersey Dotes and Dozy Dotes." And they said, "You go right ahead, but look at that screen right there." So I did. My first introduction to television.
So it was almost like a screen test.
And
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
So I sang, and I had no idea I could sing. I went back into the other room. They said, "Thank you, little girl." I went back into the other room. My aunt looked at me and she said, "You can really sing." And I said, "I can?" So that was it.
Really?
She told my mother I needed lessons, but when my mother took me to this wonderful woman, she said, we're not going to give her lessons yet. We're going to wait a few years, and we're going to be very careful with her voice. So when I was about 13, I started taking voice lessons from Mrs. Wagner in New Rochelle, New York.
Okay.
Who should have been at the Metropolitan Opera. But her parents said, if you dare go on stage, we'll disown you. That's a terrible career for a woman. And in those days, it was frowned upon.
So you were, that was...
So I was under her wing, and she was obviously a very good teacher.
Yeah. So, so coming back to, you met Sam strictly by chance.
Right.
And an East Coast courtship started in the Boot Heel of Missouri.
Yes.
Let's go over to the few instances of an East Coast courtship getting started in the Boot Heel of Missouri.
Yes.
So you continued to sing, and then you got the teaching assistantship at University of Missouri, Columbia, while your husband was in law school.
While he was in law school.
Okay. So how did you, how do we get from there to the Ozark Jubilee? And how you got on
that's really relatively simple, because when he graduated from law school and I graduated with my master's, there were several law firms in Columbia interviewing the students that had graduated. One of the law firms from Springfield, Missouri, interviewed Sam. And Miller Fairman law firm, here and very well known at the time. And they asked him to go to work for them. And they brought us down here first. They wanted to make sure we liked Springfield. They didn't want to hire someone that didn't, especially whose wife didn't like it.
Yeah. And roughly what year was this, roughly?
1959.
Oh, okay.
So he accepted the job. And we came down here. And I kept singing. I sang in a church choir, and it was very strange how this happened. There was a Kiwanis minstrel show here in town. The Kiwanis put on a minstrel show every year. And someone had heard me sing. I don't know whether it was at church or where it was, and they said, we'd like for you to sing in this show, and I think S.K. Grundy is the director and would like to hear you sing. And I said, well, that's fine. I'll talk to him and ask him what he wants me to sing. So I did. And I sang on the show. S.K. Grundy, at the time, had been asked if he would get a group together for the Ozark Jubilee to back the stars and do a special, one of the special songs on our own.
Oh, so you were the performers of that song.
Well, we backed the stars.
Yeah.
We backed up their, whatever their vocal was. But we also had a special that we did. Just the Jubilaires.
Really?
So I, of course, said yes immediately, and I was going to get union wages, and you don't pass that up.
Yeah.
So, absolutely, I said I would love to do that. So he said, we have the Pitchhikers.
Yeah.
They're the International Barbershop Quartet.
Yeah.
And they come from Nixa. Most of them came from Nixa.
Yeah, originally they all came from Nixa.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then one dropped out and they brought in another person. I don't know where
I think he moved to Alaska or something.
Alaska, yeah.
Right. So that's how it all started, and it was a wonderful experience.
So the three women, so
Yes.
the Jubilaires were 7 people.
Yes.
4 males and 3 women.
Right.
You didn't know the other 2 women before you
No.
before S.K. Grundy just brought you all together?
That's exact. I didn't know any of them.
Do you remember the first rehearsal or anything that you had as a group? What did you
Kind of.
do?
Well, I was the high soprano, and Junie, I think Junie was the alto, and the middle voice was, you probably know.
It's Keith Keltner's recording.
Yes,
It'll be in there.
sure,
Yeah.
he's got all the information.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got along immediately right from the start. We had no problem, and I guess we must have had a wonderful blend, because S.K. Grundy was Wonderful musician. Very talented.
And he was affiliated with Drury in college.
Actually, Evangel.
Oh, really?
I think it was Evangel.
Oh, okay.
Could be wrong about that, but I'm
not sure either. I thought it was Drury.
not positive. But
yeah. But he had some sort of...
He had a university job, a college job.
Somewhere
yes.
in town, yeah. Okay.
He
And he really knew his music.
Yes.
He brought you all together.
Yes.
And you didn't know the other two women at all.
No, and I didn't know the four men.
Yeah. But you hit it off.
We were fairly new in Springfield.
Yeah.
And we hit it off right away. Singers, you know, we all sing, and we thought the sound was pretty good. We liked it. And SK loved it. And he arranged all our music. He was just a brilliant musician. He could arrange our music just sitting right here, no piano, nothing. He would just arrange it. And we had one rehearsal a week on a Wednesday, I believe it was, at KWTO.
Now, where were the offices then? Were they
on Glenstone?
Glenstone, okay.
Yes, and there's a large building there. I don't know what it is now. It was the KWTO building.
It's law offices now. John T. Woodruff built that house.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh,
when he developed that neighborhood. We're not sure if he ever lived in it. He sold it to Charles Martin, who was the local kind of an entrepreneur, but he also ran a music piano business and music store. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But it was KWTO's offices,
but it was a
studios.
fairly large building, yeah.
Yeah.
And they had a recording studio, which is what we needed. And that's why we went there, because we recorded our pieces. Now, we sang them live Saturday night.
Right.
The show was live, strictly live.
Right. As long as I point out to people that might be viewing this, really live. There was no 8-second delay on a live broadcast. It was live.
It was.
Yeah, if somebody fell over, the whole world saw it.
That's exactly right. That was it. And, you know, we were a bit nervous about it. We did our special numbers. We loved it. We were seven hams, you know. We just loved doing what we were doing.
So how long did you practice before you appeared on live national television?
Well, just that Wednesday evening, he would bring the arrangements. Oh, yes. It was really quick. Well, we all could read music.
Yeah.
And he would bring the arrangements. We'd rehearse. He'd say, okay, now we're going to record them. Push the button, record them. I said, okay, we'll see you Saturday. And then Saturday, we had to get there probably around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon to run through the show for our to know where we were going and where are we going to sit there, are we going to stand over there?
Are there going to be hay bales on the stage?
Right. And where are we going to be? Are we going to be in back of the star? Are we going to be over here? So we had to do all the stage arrangements on Saturday.
Yeah.
The show was Saturday night. And then, this is funny, for dinner, almost every Saturday night, the 7 of us would go to a pizza house, which was like 2 doors down, and eat pizza. Wonderful being young.
Yeah.
Fill ourselves up with pizza and come back and do the show. That was really interesting.
Yeah. So describe what it was like. Do you remember the first show that you appeared on? Do you remember? Were you nervous? Was it?
I think I was, because I wanted to do everything just perfect. You know, you want to be. How many people are watching this? We don't know.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people out there in the audience. It was packed every Saturday night.
Yeah.
And the cars, the license plates were from all over the country.
Yeah. A lot of people came in from out of town, and they'd hold up placards of where they were from when they'd scan the audience.
That's right.
Yeah. And I've seen reports that as many as 9 million people watched the live television broadcast.
It's very possible. My mother was very unhappy that my husband took me away from New York, because she thought I was going to be on stage in New York.
Yeah.
So he called her, when this all occurred, he called her and he said, you won't believe this, but June is going to be on national television. And you should turn your television on Saturday night.
ABC.
Yes. And you'll see her. And she'll perform. She said, I don't believe it. And he said, oh, yes. from Springfield, Missouri.
Uh-huh.
And sure enough, she did. Well, the next morning she called back and she said, well, I saw it. It's wonderful. But she's singing country music.
I was going to say, it was not opera, it was hillbilly music.
It was not opera. Was that? Anyway, I got on the phone. I said, Mother, we're having a wonderful time. I'm making equity. I'm a member of the union. I'm making equity wages, and I'm having a wonderful time. She said, well, I'm really happy too. So she was.
Good.
She just had to complain a little bit.
Yeah, good. So then you became almost like regulars on the Ozark Jubilee.
We were. Every Saturday night.
Every Saturday night you had some role.
Yes, we did.
Uh-huh.
With whatever star was there.
Uh-huh.
I don't think there was a star that performed that we didn't back for at least one number.
So, do you have any memories of any particular stars, whether they were good memories or bad memories, prima donnas or just good folk? Or...
What was the name of the guy with the big cowboy hat? He gave us all cowboy hats.
Roy Acuff? Roy Acuff?
No. Might come to me. He was kind of a prima donna.
Okay.
He thought he was a big cowboy.
Yeah.
But he did bring us all cowboy hats.
Did Gene Autry ever perform on
No.
Ozark Jubilee? Well, I apologize. Do you remember anything about Red Foley as the host?
We did sing with Red Foley.
You did? Okay.
Yes, we did.
Had a good voice?
In the very beginning. He was an entertainer. Not so much a good voice. He knew how to sing the song to make everybody like it and put the right inflections in it. And he appreciated us. We enjoyed singing with Red Foley. We liked it.
What was it like backstage during the show? Was it
kind of casual?
Really? But it wasn't too wild and crazy? It was just you kind of waiting to go on?
Yeah, exactly.
And after you come off, would you hang around or would you say, okay?
Oh, no, we'd stay.
Yeah, for the...
Yeah.
Was there always like a bring everybody out at the stage at the end of the show and take a bow kind of thing?
Right.
Yeah. Now, I'm just starting to research the Ozark Jubilee, but sometimes, I think especially during the summer months, they do two shows. One would be the live nationally broadcast show, and then they'd have a late show because they had so many people coming into town, especially during the summer months. Did you ever do two?
I don't remember that.
Oh, okay, all right. Did you ever travel? Because during the week sometimes they'd go out and do shows in Ava or wherever.
If they did, they probably didn't want to pay for 7 other people.
Okay, so you never traveled.
No.
This was really your only singing.
Was the live
gig.
Network show?
Was the live network show?
That was it. But that was good for us.
Yeah. Do you know why it was 4 men and 3 women? Did SK ever explain why?
I really am not sure. Really, the only voices he needed from the women were my first soprano and a second soprano. She was a second soprano. And an alto. That was it. They're really the only voices you needed. And the men were baritone, bass, and maybe 2 baritones, bass and a tenor. So
the 7 of you together sounded really good.
It really did.
Yeah. Now, the 4 Hitchhikers made 1 record. Did they ever talk to you about maybe making a record as the Jubilaires? Or?
We did make records.
You did?
We made them in Kansas City.
Really?
Yes.
How many? More than 1?
I don't know what happened to them. Somebody said they found some of our recordings in an archive in Texas.
It wasn't San Antonio, was it?
Could have been. There was some archive.
Well, I've heard a rumor that some kinescopes that we were talking about earlier from the Ozark Jubilee were turned up in San Antonio.
That could be where they were.
So I need to track that down.
The University of Missouri may have gotten some. When I received an award from them, they did show a film. I think they have some.
Okay.
Interestingly, I don't.
you think it's the library or the public television station up there?
Well, I got the Faculty Alumni Award. I'm looking at it right now. And they showed some of the Ozark Jubilee of me.
Oh, good.
I think, maybe my husband will remember where they got it, but he's the one I think that told me that there were some in Texas. In some archive.
I'll need to try to track that down because I've heard twice now that San Antonio is a place where some of these kinescopes were kept. I know the Country Music Foundation in Nashville has some. The Cy Simon donated his to Nashville.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And then these ones turned up in the UCLA Film and Television Archive. But there were 297 shows total, as I recall. And even if you add those two together, it's only a little over 100. So about a third of them have been, I know there are in existence, but there's got to be, hopefully there's more out there that...
I wonder if it was the later shows that they recorded.
Well, actually the ones at UCLA are the early, the 55, 56, 57.
The earlier ones.
Really, yeah. And the one we had them do one just for, because they said, we don't know what we're going to find when we open these canisters. It might be just... not, just dust or who knows what. So we paid them to digitize one, and the quality's good. And that was like one of the first, it was still, I don't know if you knew this now, but early on, the Ozark Jubilee was broadcast live from Mizzou. Because they didn't have a network connection down here in Springfield in 55. And the only reason, my understanding is the only reason they had a connection up there was for football games.
Of course.
So about the first, first 20 episodes or so were done from Columbia. So actually they'd take a bus up there early Saturday morning, do the show, come back late, or early Sunday morning, they get back here late and do it again. So we actually have one that's not done in the Jewel Theater. It's done at KOMU, I think is the call letters, in Columbia.
Funny, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Well, Red Foley had a house here.
Yeah. Yeah.
In Brentwood.
Yeah. That was a big thing to lure Red away from the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville to bring him to Springfield.
I know.
Yeah. You kind of brightened up when I mentioned Cy Simon. Do you have any memories of Cy Simon?
I do. I really do. He was very energetic, walking around and talking to the performers, and he was a very nice guy.
Was he there every week, pretty much?
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Joe Slattery, you remember Joe Slattery?
Yes, I remember Joe Slattery very well.
What are your memories of Joe?
I just remember him as being kind of always with a smile on his face. Of course, he was the spokesperson.
Right.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, he was always...
But was he sort of that way off screen as well?
A little bit. He couldn't get rid of that wonderful voice he had.
Right, right. Had a good television FM voice, and yeah. Are there any other incidents during the Jubilee that you remember? Whether it was a particularly memorable episode or one where you had all kinds of problems, production problems, performance problems?
As long ago as that was, we really didn't have any performance problems. We were so staged, especially with the dancers. When the dancers were on stage, we were not on stage because they took the whole stage.
Not enough room. Yeah.
No. And but we always had a nice set. Maybe we'd sit on bales of hay, or maybe there was a cornfield or something else, maybe a little house in our background. They always made little sets for us, which I thought was a lot of fun.
Who decided what you wore? Did you?
We had costumes. Boy, I wish I could find those. We wore the same thing. We had a full skirt and kind of like a peasant blouse, not very dressy, more country, of course. We wanted to look the part. And we sometimes, if we were going to get a new outfit, you know, we'd all talk about it and say, well, now, I don't want a blue skirt. No, we're not going to have a blue skirt, you know.
Blue's not my color.
Yeah. Well, you can't have a white top. Oh, I know, we can't have a white top.
Yeah. And during black and white television, you had to be very careful about, you know, the colors were all going to be grayscale, so you had to be careful. I know in reading about the sets, is they had to think almost in terms of black and white.
Yes.
They had to mediate between what the live in-person audience was going to see and what the live television audience was going to see. And sometimes a bright color would attract the in-person audience, but it might not work well on the television.
Right.
Black and white.
Right. Well, the camera didn't like it.
Yeah.
At all.
And stripes and things. You got to be careful about that stuff.
No. You had to be careful. I thought we went into color toward the end of the show.
It did. Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
We had, which was, you know, we thought that was an amazing thing.
Yeah.
That we were going to have color.
Do you have any memories about the Jewel Theater itself? I mean, do you have any memories about it?
Well, we moved theaters. Our first theater, we moved theater. We went from one theater to the other.
Did you go over to the Landers then, do you remember? Or?
The Landers.
Yeah.
Is what I remember.
That's the one you remember?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We had much better backstage there. The June Theater didn't have much backstage.
I mean, I've read that it was kind of a dump even in the 1950s. And it was torn down shortly after the Jubilee left.
Yeah, it was
kind of on its last legs as a theater.
Yeah. We actually had dressing rooms in the Landers. That was nice. That was very nice.
Did you ever perform twice in one show?
No.
Always just once?
One performance straight through.
So you didn't have to worry about a costume change or anything like that?
No, we wore the same thing each Saturday night we wore the same thing.
Unless you decided to change it up a little bit.
Unless we decided we were going to change for the next couple of shows or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we didn't change costume during the show.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
So when the show ended, how did the Jubilaires feel? Was it like, okay, that's it, it was a nice run, but it's over? Or did you try to what were your thoughts? Were you going to try to keep the Jubilaires going? Or?
You know, we were disappointed, naturally. But then I wanted to keep singing. So I went on, and I went to Missouri State, actually, and got together with the head of the music department, and we formed the Civic-Aires, which was just a local group, and we were going to do, and we did concertizing, and we traveled to the small little places around, so they could hear good vocal music. So that's what we did.
How big a group was this?
Oh, well, it was a good-sized choral group. I have a picture of it, I think, in my office. But it was about 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, a real choral group. And we were even invited to Washington, D.C. to perform one year. When they had what was it they had? There was a big event. I don't know. I can't remember what it was.
Wasn't an inauguration.
No. It was like the 100th anniversary of something.
Yeah.
And we sang at the Kennedy Center.
Oh, really? Kennedy Center salutes kind of thing? Yeah.
So that's what I did after the Jubilee was over.
How long did you do that?
Oh, quite a while. We were even given a little bit of money from the state because we traveled to different towns and cities to perform. We did it for, 8 years.
Oh, really?
We did it for a good period of time.
The Civic-Aires.
We were called the Civic-Aires.
Okay.
We designed that name. We thought that was good.
Yeah.
Because we were a civic group.
Yeah. Okay. So you've lived in the Ozarks pretty much since
1959.
Since you married and your husband came back to go to law school.
So this is where he practiced law.
So you've spent the bulk of your life in the Ozarks.
That's right.
Do you feel like you're an Ozarker now?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
When we first came, of course, we weren't.
Yeah.
We weren't native-born Springfieldians.
Yeah.
But they've gotten over that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhat. I've heard that you can never. If you weren't born in the Ozarks, it's like you got one strike against you that you'll never erase.
Well, initially, but you know,
But
I
I
don't
think
think that way anymore.
57
There
years.
are more people here that weren't born in the Ozarks.
I know. 57 years, living years.
That's a long time.
It counts for something.
Yes.
And I don't want to focus just on your Jubilaires part of phase of your life, but anything else about the Ozarks that has really stuck with you, a memory of something, whether it was any kind of experience?
It's hard to say because moving here, I really didn't expect a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we were going to a nice, small, quiet town.
Mm-hmm.
It reminded me of Westchester County. When we first came down to visit, the parks and the greenery, and it just reminded me of Westchester County.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt very much at home.
Mm-hmm.
People were nice. My husband joined Rotary right off the bat, so we became friends with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And of course I sang in church, and that was another way that we met people.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I was choir director and organist of our St. James Episcopal Church when we first organized, because we had to hold services in the Tower Theater.
Oh.
We didn't have a building. So we'd go early and turn all the signs around.
Uh-huh.
The
So
movie
the
signs.
the Tower Theater is over
In the
there
plaza.
on Glenstone, yeah? Tower
It's
Plaza?
on Glenstone in the Plaza
Just-
Shopping Center,
Just south of Sunshine.
right in the middle.
Yeah, where the tower is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And it was a movie theater.
yeah, that's where you had services.
And that's where we held church services.
So you've had multiple reasons to be in theaters around the area during your adult life.
Yes.
So I didn't know you played the piano or the organ.
Well, that's
or-
the first thing. No, I don't play the organ. The organ is a whole different thing than the piano.
Uh-huh.
But I started piano lessons when I was about 7.
Mhm.
So, when anybody asks my opinion about their children taking music lessons, I always say start them with piano.
Mm-hmm.
That's the basis of all the music.
Mhm.
If they know how to play the piano, they can do anything else.
Mhm.
They can play the guitar, they can play the trumpet, they can sing.
Mhm.
So,
Anything else? We'll wrap up if.
I can't think of anything right now. I may later.
Okay. Well, I may want to contact you later, and I apologize. I was going to bring you. I was going to have that. We did get Keith Keltner did give me a DVD that has the final episode of the Ozark Jubilee, or Jubilee USA, it would have been called.
Really?
It's not a very good copy. It's kind of dark, but the Jubilaires did perform on that final show.
Oh yes, we did.
And there was a close-up of during the song, there was a female close-up, and I don't know if it was you or not, but
Well, I was the tallest woman.
yeah. So I'll make just a brief appointment with you sometime and get it all queued up, and we're actually going to have that digitized too, so that we.
Oh, that'd be great.
Even though it's not a good version of it, so that our goal is to preserve the Ozark Jubilee.
Mm-hmm.
And then make it freely available.
That's wonderful.
To anybody who wants to. So
That's really exciting.
yeah, it's exciting, and it's definitely part of Ozark's history and culture. And as Wayne Glenn said, it's the biggest musical thing that has ever happened in the Ozarks by far, according to Wayne Glenn.
Yes.
So Ozark Mountain Daredevils, so the Ozark Jubilee was a big deal, and it's in danger of being lost. If we know there are kinescopes out there, but who knows what shape they're in, and who knows what shape they'll be in 20 years. So we got to get those things digitized so that.
And it's the history of not only Ozarks, music, but it's a history of the beginning of television, coast-to-coast television.
Exactly. So,
it's a big deal.
You could look at it from different angles. It could be Ozark's history and life. It could be country music. Yes. It could be early television, live television.
Yes.
I mean, I've just seen one episode, but it's just fascinating. You forget, I was born in 57, so wasn't really there for the early days of television, wasn't really conscious of the early days of television.
Sure.
But I'd forgotten that most of the sponsors were not sponsors for 30 seconds, they were sponsors for the whole show. And then when you do a commercial, it would be the actors would just, So in the Ozark Jubilee, really a commercial was just a commercial break was, camera 1 was here, camera 2 was on the commercial set. You just go camera 1, camera 2, and then it'd be somebody, and the one was for a beer company. And so, they'd actually pour the beer, they'd open the beer, and this is pre-pull tabs. So they'd have a can opener, and then they'd open the can talking about how great this beer is. They'd pour a beer, and then the guy would drink a beer
on television.
Live national television, And the other thing, just like production qualities, I'm not a media studies major, but the production qualities are just fascinating. So, the sets, like you say, how they did early sets, the fact that they always used boom mics. They never used floor mics, evidently, on the Ozark Jubilee. So sometimes you can actually see the shadow of the boom mic, coming into the scene.
It wasn't that sophisticated.
I know. And so in one of this episode that I've seen, Jeannie Shepherd is going to come out and sing a trio with Red Foley and very young Porter Wagner. Mm-hmm. They all three had a recording of Satisfied Mind out that year. It all charted. And so they brought, first it was Red. They said, okay, Porter Wagner come out here. Then Jeannie came out. Jeannie Shepherd, for about 5 seconds, just stared at the floor. I don't know if she was just nervous or, Now with national television, with live national television, with an 8-second delay in it, they all know their marks. They know which camera is live. They've been coached how to, for screen presence. Back then, it was just, they didn't know what that was new. It was a new medium, and they were trying to figure it out.
But I think S.K. Grundy was so professional. We knew exactly where we were standing. Mm-hmm. There was no doubt in our mind.
Did they actually have like little pieces of tape on the floor or something on the stage?
Or he'd say, 3 of you will be behind the bales of hay. There'll be 2, 1 on each side. Mm-hmm. We knew whether there was a mark there or not, because we rehearsed it that day. Mm-hmm. So we knew exactly where we were going. Mm-hmm. There was never any doubt. And we always knew to be ready. You don't know when the camera's coming.
Did you know when the camera was on you, though? Was there a red light over the... Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, for the songs, would you have cue cards? Or did you have to make sure you memorized those?
We memorized it.
No, memorized the lyrics.
No cue cards.
No cue cards.
Mm-mm. Okay. We knew our songs. Mm-hmm. And we may not have gotten them till Wednesday.
Yeah.
But we had to know them.
You had to know them. Mm-hmm. And then when you finished a song, so let's say, a star's singing and your backup vocals, typically when a song finished, would Red then come out and kind of shake hands with the key singer?
I don't remember him doing that.
Okay. You remember how did songs end? Would they kind of wait for the camera to go, the red light to go?
Yes, the camera would just go to the next scene, whatever it was going to be, or the next person that was going to perform.
As soon as you saw it leave you, then you were off stage.
As soon as the camera moved, then we were free to leave. Mm-hmm. We couldn't leave until the camera moved.
Right. So you knew that.
Yes.
No, if the camera's still on me, don't go anywhere.
Let's keep smiling.
So what did it feel like after you performed? Were you kind of, was it an adrenaline rush, or was it just like, okay, see you next Wednesday, we'll practice next Wednesday?
Kind of. We were always, we were kind of like, wow, that was a good show. Mm-hmm. Or we made that little mistake in the middle of that song. I hope nobody saw it, And usually, if we did make a mistake, it was something minor.
Yeah.
We actually became all very professional, I think. Mm-hmm.
Did you ever get any mail, fan mail?
No.
Okay.
No. They didn't know who we were.
Didn't they ever announce you as the Jubilaires?
Oh, they announced us as the Jubilaires.
Yeah.
And I think they may have introduced at the beginning of the...
when you started?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that. That's a good question.
Okay. But sort of everybody knew that you were basically the backup vocalists.
We were.
Yeah.
But we did have that special that we did.
So you did a whole special, or a 30-minute special?
Yeah.
Just the Jubilaires?
We had, SK always had a piece for us to do by ourselves. No backup. That we were it.
And how often did you do that?
One piece a show.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
So every show,
We had a special.
You had your song.
Mm-hmm.
That was Jubilaires.
It was the Jubilaires. Yeah. Wagon Wheels was one of them.
The Wagon Wheelers?
You remember that song?
Oh, no. I was thinking about
No.
the
It was a song.
square dancing. Oh, yeah.
No, it was a song. It was called Wagon Wheels.
Wagon Wheels. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So the typical show was musical performances.
And
Square
dancers.
Square dancers. Comedy routines.
Yes.
That was kind of the mix of the show.
Mm-hmm.
When you were on the 59 and 60.
Mm-hmm. Till it went off.
Yeah. Would that have been the Wagon Wheelers was the main square dancing group then? As opposed to the Promenaders? Or you remember
The Promenaders were the
main one?
were the main dance group.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Was that a big deal in terms of the production? You know, okay, here come the dancers. It's like, okay, musical act, musical act, musical act. Here come the dancers. Because they had to have the whole stage.
They did.
And so just from a production standpoint, it must have been a little bit upsetting or something. You know, it's just like, well, okay, here comes the big dancing group, you know.
I think they had to organize it so that if we had a set,
Yeah, that set was off ASAP.
then that set was gone.
Yeah.
Or the dancers performed before we did,
Mm-hmm.
and they put the set on while something else was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't matter if the audience saw what they were doing,
Right,
as long as the television audience didn't see it.
right. If they were doing a commercial on the other camera at that time,
Right.
you know, that's when they'd come in, the scene crews would come in and change the scenery around and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really it was 52 weeks a year?
Oh, yeah.
You did it every Saturday?
Every Saturday night.
Every Saturday night.
Yeah. And then we were told they were going off the air.
How much advance notice did you know that it had been canceled, I guess we'd say today?
That it was going to be when?
Canceled. The show had been canceled.
Not much.
Really?
At all. If at all.
Hmm.
It may have just happened. It may have just said, well, don't bother to show up next Saturday.
By the way,
The show's been canceled.
This is the last one.
I think it kind of happened suddenly.
Yeah. And you were, as a group, you were shocked, upset?
We were.
Yeah.
And we talked about getting together again, but we never did.
Hmm.
We all went our separate ways. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, the Hitchhikers were still the Hitchhikers.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. The Jubilaires
yes.
were really only on the Jubilee, only on the nationally broadcast Jubilee. You never did the...
No.
Because a lot of those acts during the week, they'd do a Sunday, they do Saturday night, then they do a Sunday night show somewhere, and then they go out, and then... What I've heard from others is that they did like a Friday afternoon rehearsal or kind of layout of the show. And everybody had to be there, but evidently the Jubilaires never had to be there on Fridays. It's like all day long. They'd sort of just designed the show, you know.
Yeah, it was already designed when we got there.
Yeah, so you only had to be there Saturdays.
We were only there Saturday.
Sort of like the dry run, Saturday afternoon.
Yes.
Yeah. Then you go eat pizza.
We go eat our
And then you come back and do the show.
Come back and do the show.
Now, when you came back to do the show, you don't remember much about the Jewel Theater, but, you know, how would you enter through the main entrance? Would you come in through the stage entrance?
There's stage entrances. No,
Yeah.
we wouldn't come in the main entrance.
Yeah.
There were entrances and exits from
Yeah.
the stage
Yeah.
to the backstage.
Yeah. So you come in the stage entrance,
Mm-hmm.
get ready. Would you dress there, especially once you had at the hairdresser?
Actually, no, I think we put our outfits on at home.
Mm-hmm.
So we wouldn't have to do that.
You never got caught in traffic or, snowy night, late for the...
No, luckily.
How soon did they say, well, you have to be there at least a half an hour before airtime, or?
We definitely were there for at least a half an hour.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little earlier than that, because, but not always, because we'd been there Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
We'd staged the whole thing.
Right.
So we knew what we were doing.
How much of a time break did you have typically between finishing the run through on Saturday afternoon and then before?
Well, enough to eat pizza.
Showtime. 2 doors down. You remember the name of the pizza place? Or?
No, I really don't.
Yeah, but it was just about 2 doors down.
It was 2 doors down. It was 2 doors to the east of the theater.
Uh-huh.
Funny. Huh.
I'll have to investigate that and see what that restaurant was. 2 doors east of the Landers.
Yes.
I think, yeah. Okay.
Landers.
Okay.
And it was a good, they had a much better backstage. They had dressing rooms, they had all kinds of things back there.
Yeah.
It was nice.
Okay. Well, we've been speaking with June Hamra. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
One of the Jubilaires.
Yes.
Once a Jubilaire, always a Jubilaire.
That's correct.
Okay. And a Civic-Aire.
Yes, we became Civic-Aires.
Okay. Thanks very much.